I'm Michael Marsh. Welcome to the program dedicated to reestablishing constitutional government, first in Oregon and then in the United States. Now, there's a lot of issues, and I haven't been on for a while because of health problems. But I'm back, and today my guest is Jim Ludwig, who is the Communications Director for Oregonians for Immigration Reform. Jim, I understand your organization has started an initiative petition. Would you like to tell us what that is about?
Certainly. Thank you for having me. Oregon is a state that has what they call a sanctuary law. It's ORS 181A.820 that essentially says no law enforcement agent or any subdivision of a law enforcement agency can use time or money for the identification or arrest of somebody whose sole violation of the law is that they're in the country illegally. Unfortunately, they have construed that in a much broader sense that prevents local and state police from working directly with Immigration and Customs. And I'll give you a good example of where it's been a problem. In Multnomah County, not long ago, a man who had been deported 20 times had been arrested by Multnomah County sheriffs and was being incarcerated. And Immigration and Customs wanted to be alerted when they were going to release him back into the public. And the sheriff refused to cooperate with Immigration and Customs and let the man go before ICE was able to come and pick him up. Unfortunately, the criminal went on to rape one woman and sexually abuse somebody else. And that has raised a huge tumult, but it's put a spotlight on why it's wrong to have a sanctuary policy in the state. We're supposed to be a nation of the rule of law where all laws were enforced equally, and on anybody who violates a law, they should be held accountable. Unfortunately, what it's done is set up a two-tiered system where American citizens are held to the letter of the law and people illegally here seem to be able to get a pass, and that's wrong. And one of the results of all of that is Oregonians for Immigration Reform has filed an initiative to overturn that state statute and allow ICE to have access to the prison system when illegal aliens are going to be released from prison. They can pick them up and put them in deportation status.
Yeah, from my reading of the law, because I went over it yesterday, it seems like that's already the law. What the law says, and it's been misused greatly, is that we're not supposed to just stop people on the streets to ask them their immigration status, and that's all it does. It doesn't say, the implication of the way it's written is if they're committing another crime, then it's okay to find out who they are and turn them over to the feds.
Well, we're not in favor of state or local police being ICE agents going on rounding up people who are in the country illegally. However, we are opposed to any public agency not working with the federal government. The federal government has purview over law enforcement in the United States. I mean, every nation has the sovereign right to enforce immigration policy. And in America, every citizen has the constitutional right to advocate for policies they feel that are in the best interest of the country. Oregonians for Immigration Reform believe that absent ICE being able to directly arrest somebody, basically you turn people out who are illegally in the country, and they oftentimes go on and commit more crimes.
Yeah, because I'm not aware of any, if they're in jail already, nobody's in jail because they missed a Sunday school class.
Yeah.
You know, they're already committing a crime, it seems like. And it seems like, you know, if an American citizen commits a crime, they stay in jail. So how come these undocumented aliens aren't staying in jail?
Well, it's because of the politically correct nature of Oregon state government and unfortunately that state statute. But most Oregonians are opposed to those policies. And I'll give you a good example of the proof of that statement. In 2013, the Oregon legislature passed a bill to give driver cards to illegal aliens. And it was pushed by Governor John Kitzhofer. And on May 1st, 2013, on the steps of the state capitol, he signed into law with great fanfare this bill that would give a driver card to people illegally here. Oregonians for Immigration Reform were at that program, and as soon as the ink was dry on the governor's signature, we started the referendum process. And in Oregon, we have the initiative and referendum process, which gives citizens a certain amount of control over bills that the Oregon legislature may pass. A referendum is where you take a bill the Oregon legislature has passed but not yet enacted, and you say, I think that's a bad bill. We think citizens should have the opportunity to weigh in on whether they think it's a good or bad policy. And so we signed on to do a referendum. Now, nobody gave us a chance to succeed because you only have 3 months after the end of the legislative session to collect 58,142 signatures, and it's a daunting task.
Yeah.
I didn't give us much of a chance. I didn't think under that short time frame we could do it. In fact, if there was a tote board in the rotunda of the Capitol, we would have went off at 1,000 to 1 underdogs. But nonetheless, we took it on, and fortunately, we made connections with people all over the state, people in different counties where they were having county fairs, collected signatures for us. We went to the state fair, collected signatures. We instituted a unique program where we had drive-through signature signing events, and we put it on the radio that we were going to be at a certain place, and people could drive through, not even have to get out of the car and sign our referendum. One of the places we did it was at the Bomber Restaurant in McLaughlin in Portland. And people would drive up, roll down their windows, and we'd open up the signature sheet for them and ask them, did they need information? And they'd most often say, no, we know why we want to sign that, and they did that. So we, make a long story short, we succeeded. We collected 77,000 signatures. We pruned out the duplicates and unregistered voters and turned in 71,000 signatures. And we qualified for the vote. The reason we qualified is we had the highest verification rate in the history of the Oregon legislature. Our verification rate was 93.5%. Astounding to me, and I've lived most of my life in Oregon, was the numerous places around the state that we got signature sheets back from. Places I didn't even know existed in Oregon. Actually, 134 different communities got them back to us. We also broke the all-time record for online signature sheets, more than doubled them. And so we felt pretty confident going into the election because of those successes. When it came time to campaigning in 2014, our opponents raised $660,000 to pass driver cards for illegal aliens. We raised $60,000, so they outspent us 10 to 1. The end results were amazing. We clobbered them. Oregon has 36 counties. 35 of the counties voted against driver cards for illegal aliens. The only county to vote for it was Multnomah County. Of the 36 counties, 18 of them voted by over 80% against giving driver cards for illegal aliens. So we felt vindicated, And we continue to feel that's how most people believe that our laws should be respected. Now, the issue about the sanctuary status of Oregon is that it basically rewards people who are in the country illegally and tells them that they're above the law. And we think that's wrong. And so we filed an initiative to overturn that, and we're collecting signatures right now.
How many signatures will you need to collect?
We'll need 88,000 plus, but we have until July of next year. So we got a lot more time than we had for the referendum, but it's still a daunting task. We're just a regular group of American citizens who volunteer. Nobody gets paid for anything that we do. I could tell you that response so far, when I've been out collecting signatures for the initiative to overturn sanctuary cities and states, has been amazing. I've never had such a high percentage of people willing to sign on any initiative I've ever done before when I've had the chance to explain to them what it's about.
So, so it has to be turned in July, next July?
Yeah, that's the end of the signature gathering time. What has happened is, in the past, when you've started an initiative process, you have to go out and get 1,000 signatures that are verified by the elections office, and then you go into the process of selecting the ballot title. And the person who selects the ballot title usually is the Secretary of State and the Attorney General. And in the past, when you've qualified and they're going through that process, opponents of what you're trying to do generally will appeal the ballot title all the way up to the Oregon Supreme Court. And in the meantime, you can't be collecting signatures till you get your ballot title back. Well, the new Secretary of State, Dennis Richardson, has changed administrative rules and is allowing us to collect signatures while we're waiting for that process to be adjudicated.
That is very good. Now, in the past, I've noticed, because I've worked on several initiative drives, the Attorney General, on if they're conservative issues, has a tendency to give ballot titles that are either very hard to understand or have nothing to do with the actual.
And that has been a problem with a lot of the initiatives. People go through all the trouble, like we have, to get 1,000 signatures, go out as regular people to get that done, and then they get submarined by the Attorney General, who comes out with an indecipherable ballot title, or one that maybe people can't understand, so they naturally vote no if they don't understand what it is. The beauty of the referendum process was that we had a ballot title that was very clear and concise. And I don't think anybody who read the ballot title on that would have a misunderstanding of what the intention was. We feel very positive that if we get this on the ballot, we will win based upon the reaction we've had so far. Most Americans believe in the rule of law, the concept that if there's a law in the books, everybody is supposed to obey it. You just can't pick and choose which laws you like and obey those and ignore the ones you don't like. And Oregon's sanctuary policies are an affront to that belief of the rule of law. They've basically sanctioned people who are in the country illegally not to be arrested or detained based upon that issue.
So, if somebody watching this program wants to either sign it or even collect signatures, how would they get in touch?
Well, they should get in touch with Oregonians for Immigration Reform, and I want to read our website. I can't be trusted to verbalize it, okay?
Okay.
It's Oregon.org, OregonIR.org, OREGONIR.org. And if somebody wants a signature sheet, they can email oregon@oregonir.org, and we can mail them a signature sheet with instructions on how to properly fill it out. And it's important that they're all filled out correctly, because those that are incorrectly done will not be counted.
Yeah, and Secretary of State in the past has been very picky on
Yeah.
initiatives. Although the guy that's in there now, Dennis Richardson, is probably a little more sympathetic, but still I'm sure you'd have
Yeah.
to do it right.
Well, Oregonians for Immigration Reform is in favor of legal immigration at our traditional levels of 230,000 per year. From 1776 to 1976, we averaged about 230,000 immigrants per year, and we prospered greatly, became the most successful country in the history of the world. But we're unfortunately at 10 times that level, and it's unsustainable for us. The Census Bureau does its census report every 10 years. The last one was done in the year 2010, and what they showed was that our population had grown in that previous 10 years by 27 million people. Now, to put that in perspective, think about the state of Texas. 27 million people in the state of Texas. Dallas, Fort Worth, Abilene, all the towns in Texas. We grew by 27 million people in just a 10-year period of time. The birth rate of native-born Americans is at 2.1, which basically means that every woman of childbearing age has, on average, 2.1 babies. Since a certain number of babies unfortunately die, that 2.1 is birth rate at just replacement levels. Absent immigration, our population would be stabilized. I don't think we can average 2.7 million new people every year and sustain it for us environmentally, socially, fiscally, or politically. And I think it'd be a terrible legacy to leave our children if we continue on with that type of policies. And every nation has the sovereign right to set whatever immigration policy it wants. I think our country should reevaluate, and President Trump is doing that, our present immigration policies and bring them in line with our traditional levels of 230,000 per year instead of 2.7 million per year.
Okay, now everybody knows pretty much about the the crime rate among illegal aliens, even though the Democrats and their controlled media try to tamper it down. But you mentioned environmental. Are we having, because the door's been wide open in past administrations, Obama, yeah, and George W. Bush too. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, even after 9/11, he left the borders wide open. Nobody really tried to close the border until now, maybe Donald Trump. So is that having an impact on our environment, like the water and?
Well, I mean, I don't think doubling our population is sustainable for us environmentally. The Census Bureau comes up with some projections every time they do their report, where our population will be in 20 years or 50 years or by the end of this century. One of their projections is that we can double our population and have over 600 million people by the end of the century. Another one of their projections is we could be over 1 billion people.
Whoa, just in this country?
In our country alone. We're on the pace for somewhere between the 600 million and 1 billion people. I don't think that's sustainable for us in an environmental sort of way. The amount of water necessary for people, and there are parts of the United States that they're short of water right now. What would it be like if we double our population? The quality of life. If you like to fish, how would it be better environment for fish or fishing if we have twice as many people fishing? Yeah. What about open space and farmland? Look at the Willamette Valley. There are places in the Willamette Valley that you and I can remember were farmland,
yeah,
producing crops that are now covered with pavement. I don't think that's good for us environmentally, and I don't think it's sustainable for us to have the energy production to keep up with it. Right now, we have about 4% of the world's population. We consume about 24% of the world's energy. So we consume about 6 times what our population should be based upon the rest of the world. Let's say everybody in the United States comes to the conclusion that global warming is occurring. I'm not saying I agree with that, but let's say we do. Everybody agreed that global warming is occurring, and we're all Americans are going to cut their energy consumption in half. So we're going to have 330 million Americans cut all their energy in half. I'd say, to what avail? The Census Bureau predicts our population will double. So even if we cut our energy usage in half, because there'll be twice as many of us, we won't be cutting our energy usage as a country. We'll be consuming the same amount as we are now, even if we cut it in half, just because there's twice as many people. The issue of immigration, the quality of life, and the environment are all intertwined. And groups that should advocate for a more balanced approach have basically sold their soul out for having an open border policy.
Now, you mentioned there's also a financial cost.
Yeah.
How much?
Well, let me give you an example of Oregon. Okay. FAIR, the Federation of Americans for Immigration Reform, issued a report a couple of years ago, and they pegged the cost of illegal immigration in Oregon, just Oregon alone, at about a little over $1 billion a year, even subtracting out any taxes an illegal alien might pay. We don't have a sales tax, so if you don't have a sales tax, and I'm not advocating for one,
me either.
it tends to have a big effect on that. If you break it down in categories, it costs us about $750 million a year to educate the children of illegal aliens in Oregon. Right now, the cost of a child going through a public school in Oregon is close to $15,000 per year if they're in the ESL or ELL program. And most people who are coming in as illegal aliens or children of illegal aliens are put into the ESL, ELL programs as a way of helping them, I guess, navigate learning English. I think it's the wrong approach, because when I went through school, there was no such thing as that. Everybody was supposed to learn English, and they did. But right now, if you have a child in Oregon in ESL, they receive about $3,100 more per year in spending than the average kid going through a regular school. And when you add all that up, what do you get in the end? Well, according to the last report I saw from the Oregon Department of Education, little over 70% of the students in ESL, ELL programs are not up to grade level in mathematics. 70% of them are not English proficient. And 30% of them don't graduate from high school. despite the fact they get an extra $3,100 spent on them. That's just one aspect of the cost of immigration in Oregon. The prison system. We currently have close to 1,000 inmates at the Oregon State Penitentiary with ice holes, which means when they've served their jail sentence, they'll be turned over to Immigration and Customs to be deported. It costs Oregon taxpayers close to $30 million a year to provide just 3 hots and a cot for the inmates at the Oregon State Penitentiary. That doesn't include legal services. That doesn't include special health care needs. We spend, like I say, a little over $30 million. We get reimbursed by the federal government for $2.5 million. So there's a net deficit of $27 million on that alone, just to cover the cost of the 3 hots and a cot. In Yamhill County a few years ago, an illegal alien, Gustavo Mercado Murillo, was arrested and prosecuted for sexually abusing 5 children under the age of 10 years of age. And I'm going to use his case as illustrative of the potential cost. Murillo was convicted of sexually abusing children, sentenced to 75 years in prison. Now, very seldom do you ever hear about somebody being sentenced to 75 years in prison. You got to do something pretty bad. When the reporter asked the prosecutor, what exactly did Gustavo Mercado Murillo do to merit 75 years in prison, the prosecutor told the reporter, you've got a family newspaper. I'm not going to tell you exactly what he did. But we believe he did horrible things to children and a lot more than just 5. Well, he was 30 years of age at the time of his incarceration, 31 years of age. So you start doing the math on him. The cost of $30,000 per year for 3 hots and a cot over 40 years is what, $1.2 million? Yeah. But Mercado brought additional problems. He was on kidney dialysis to the tune of $300,000 per year. When he was incarcerated at the Yamhill County Jail, Jack Crabtree, the sheriff, said he's going to bankrupt us. He'll bankrupt our budget. So they expedited his trial. And once again, let's look at the potential cost. If he lives 40 years and under kidney dialysis, that's not unusual. $300,000 per year, whoa, you're looking at $12.5 million. So $12.5 million for his special medical needs, plus $1.2 million for his incarceration for 3 hots and a cot. Based upon present cost, you can see how this is adding up. But he's a gift that didn't quit giving. At the time of his incarceration, his wife was expecting their 4th child. Under the Alien Waiver Program for the Oregon Department of Health, their childbirth is covered by the taxpayers.
That's nice of us.
So we're paying all that. I don't even know what the cost would be. I don't know what the cost anymore is for that. But he has 4 children, and I don't know where they are now, but if they go through the Oregon Public Schools, and it's costing them taxpayers $15,000 per student per year, and there's 4 of them, you're looking at $60,000 per year for the 4 of them going through school for 12 years. I mean, you're talking another, what, 700,000? So, I mean, this is one man, yeah, and we're talking, I don't know, what, $10 million plus, yeah, for just one of them. Man. And we've got about 1,000 convicted illegal alien murderers at the Oregon State Penitentiary. Now, all of them are not like him, but that gives you kind of a potential cost. There are, at this prison, there are 276 convicted illegal alien murderers, which means there's likely 276 victims out there. And I don't know how many of them would never have been here to prevent their crime if we didn't have a sanctuary city. There was another incident.
We're about out of time,
Okay.
so want to give them your contact information?
Yeah, let
one more
me
time.
give that one more time. Oregonians for Immigration Reform, we've got the initiative IP22 to overturn Oregon's sanctuary policies. You want to send an email to us to get information. It's oregon@oregonir.org. If you want to visit our website, it's oregonir.org as well. And we'll get some signature sheets to you.
Thank you, and I appreciate you coming on, telling people why we need to pass this law.
Thank you so much for having me.